Chamber this week, we go down under and meet one of Australia's favorite bushrangers. We look at an installment of a long-running sandbox franchise, and we discuss how to build interesting and unique cultures that help make your world vibrant and alive. All this, plus the wackiness you've come to know and love. Tangents, bad voices, failed bits. It's all inside. All this and more on Fandom Roulette. Hey everyone, welcome to Fandom Roulette. This is Joe.
And I'm Cody.
Hey Cody, how have you been, my man?
Oh, just making my way downtown.
Faces past, and I'm homebound.
Yeah.
Redacted. You knew that you were setting me up because you know that last year that song was stuck in my head for about a month and I couldn't do anything about it.
That's true.
That was dark.
I did set you up for that.
That was dark times. Hey, so what nerdy stuff have you been up to this week?
Nerdy stuff?
Or so, yeah.
Yeah, I've been playing a couple of games.
Nice. Very good.
One of them we'll talk about in the video game section, but I just keep getting... Man... I got, I'm splitting up my time between stuff I'm working on for the next season.
Sure. Okay.
Or either next season or the season after. Who knows?
Okay.
But
yeah.
But I'm playing Kingdom Hearts 2, and such an experience. I fucking love that game.
Are you getting excited for Kingdom Hearts 3?
Oh, it's coming up, and I'm just super excited.
Are you gonna walk away?
And you're not going to hear me say.
Okay, so anyways. Yeah.
So what nerdy stuff have you been up to?
I've been revisiting some media that I've enjoyed in my past, while also watching new stuff. So, I've been catching up on a lot of shows that I kind of neglected. And then, recently rewatched one of my favorite movies, which is The Prestige by Christopher Nolan, which is a good movie if you've never seen it. I give it a thumbs up.
Nice.
Did you ever see that movie?
I don't think so.
Oh,
no.
My dude, it's so good. It's about two magicians who are competing against one another in 19th century England, maybe later. Maybe a little bit later. It's great. But anyways, welcome everyone to Fandom Roulette, a podcast.
Yes, welcome.
We talk about a myriad of nerdy things, including history, video games, role-playing games, and grab bag stuff as it comes up, as we see fit to discuss it. Oh, by the way, did you see the Captain Marvel trailer?
Fuck! No?
Oh, dude, it's really good. Oh, man, it's
what was that, 2 weeks ago?
It was about 2 weeks ago.
I'm slipping.
I kept meaning to bring it up, and I kept forgetting about it. Oh my god, I'm pretty excited about it. I've always been excited, and what's that? Did you hear that ching in the background? Why, yes, that's the Marvel money clearing, or the DC, or the Disney money clearing, because we're Marvel shills on this podcast. So good. But no, yeah.
Oh, that tasty Marvel check.
It looks really entertaining. I'm excited to see what they do with the character because Captain Marvel is awesome. So
nice. I know absolutely nothing about Captain Marvel, and I'm really excited to.
Okay. I will say this. She is a long running, well established character in the Marvel universe, who only became a captain, I think, about 3 or 4 years ago, because for the longest time, Captain Marvel was a Kree soldier, and his name was literally Marvel.
I get it.
And then she finally got to pick up the mantle and stuff, and it's very exciting. And then now,
cool. Miss
Marvel, who was what her alias was early on, is now Kamala Khan, who is a Muslim American superhero, which is really exciting in a lot of different ways. And it's all good. Go read it. It's good stuff. But anyways, so on this season of Fandom Roulette, I decided that I was going to be talking about rogues, or a fancy way of saying, you know, kind of people who go on the wrong side of the law for whatever reason, mainly because of things like disenfranchisement or poverty, or hey, my life is already pretty bad. So, hey, I'm just going to take a risk and try to improve my life using illegal means. And this place is no different.
Nice. Land pirates.
Yeah, kind of, actually. You're not super wrong. So, there is a continent, and I realized I had, oh wait, we had already talked about it like a little bit one time. So I take this back. But, there is, you know, a fascinating little continent in, well, actually, it's a very big continent, but, it is the continent of Australia. So Australia is, an interesting case because it is a country and also a complete continent. Like, it is just one continuous country, whereas with most other continents, it's split up into multiple countries and such. But in this case, we're talking a little bit about the beginnings of Australia. So, do you know why Australia was founded, Cody?
No.
Really?
I actually don't. Dude, my history is subpar at best.
No, it's cool, man.
I learn everything. I learn everything from you.
Oh.
I learned it from you.
Oh, no. You know it's true. Everything I learned it from you. But anyway, so Australia was originally established as a penal colony, which meant that it was a colony of criminals. Yeah. So here's another little fun fact. Georgia was originally also established as a colony of criminals in the Americas. And so there was something about, so Georgia was kind of like a testing grounds. This is all going to pay off, I promise. And Georgia was also kind of interesting because it sat right next to the Spanish border. So it was kind of considered like a buffer colony because the thought process was, well, if Spain invades, they're going through Georgia, which is a colony of criminals, which is a little dark, but
damn,
I know, right? So they try this out in Georgia. It's fairly successful in Georgia. And then they started looking for other things to do with, or other examples of this. And so in 1788, the first fleet of British ships arrived in Sydney, Australia, with a number of criminals. So there was also some scientific exploration of the continent, but it was originally established as a penal colony. And basically, like, penal colonies were for not necessarily like the worst criminals in the entire world. Basically, as like,
sure,
as English prisons were filling up, you were basically given like a choice between, do you want to keep working, do you want to stay in prison, or do you want to like take a risk to go to a very far away place that there's no guarantee that you'll survive the journey. And there were various protections thrown in, like, you had to work the land for a while, things like that. But after a while, you were eventually given your freedom, and then, hey, you would have a farm to go along with it. So for a lot of people, penal colonies, high risk, high reward thing. But very early on, we already start seeing some slight issues, which is we had these people called bushrangers.
Gasp! What's a bushranger?
They were basically a group of escaped convicts who had survival skills to survive in the Australian bush as a place to hide from the authorities. So the Australian bush is a kind of colloquial term to refer to the undeveloped land of Australia. So bush refers to any sparsely inhabited region, regardless of vegetation. Although in this case, it was very different than the European foliage that they were used to. There's another term for this, which is the outback. But
like the steakhouse.
Like the steakhouse. Thank you, Cody. I knew. But but in a lot of cases, like the outback was a term for like the desert, whereas like the bush was termed for the like the foliage and things like that. So I guess to give it kind of an American concept, like the bush would be like people who lived in swamps or in deep woods to like get away from like the government, basically. So that was where the term originated from, but it changed in the 1820s to refer to those who had abandoned social rights and privileges to take up robbery under arms, their quote, as a way of life, using the bush as their base. But you're probably saying to yourself, oh, there's actually kind of like a little interesting connection here, which is, once again, we see people who are taking advantage of their superior knowledge of the land and survival skills to kind of get out of the way of the government and things like that. So with pirates, they were going in and out of little inlets that you couldn't necessarily find very easily, or were hard to navigate. For people like Bonnie and Clyde, they were taking advantage of their knowledges of back roads, of rural areas, to get away from authorities quickly. Our rogue friend from India was very knowledgeable of how to evade, the British troops in the woods and things like that. So this is a sort of commonality. But I'm going to talk about one guy in particular who a lot of people argue is one of the famous, who is a guy named Ben Hall, which, as far as interesting criminal names go, is not the most exciting.
John Smith, the best bandit ever.
Right? Yeah. So Ben Hall, fairly standard beginning. He was born in 1837 in New South Wales, Australia. And basically, both of Ben's parents were convicted for minor stealing offenses and transported to New South Wales, met one another, fell in love, and got married. And here comes Ben. And so at the age of 19, Ben married a lady named Bridget Walsh, who had a sister who was married to a stockman named John Brown. And after a while, Ben Hall and John McGuire, who was another sister-in-law or brother-in-law, decided that they were going to, start being criminals. So during the summer of 1861 to 1862, he basically left his wife and their son to live with a young stockman named James Taylor, and started hanging out with a notorious bushwhacker named Frank Christie, whose alias was Gardiner. And then in 1862, Ben was immediately arrested by a police inspector named Sir Frederick Pottinger. An awesome name alert. And so basically, very shortly afterwards, his charge was dismissed when someone changed their evidence. So he was able to leave this and then started working for Gardner again, leading a gang of 8 men. So they robbed the Gold Escort coach, which had banknotes and about 2,700 ounces of gold, which is worth more than 14,000 pounds. So that is a big steal. And then, over time, his life seems to get progressively worse. He seems to spend money about as quickly as he was getting it, or, they were, getting robbed themselves. But over time, he had built a reputation for himself. So over 100 robberies are attributed to Ben Hall and his associates, making them one of the most prolific bushranging units in the period, or the whole colony. So these included the holding up of several villages, dozens of mail coach robberies, and the regular theft of prized racehorses, which is pretty hilarious. But it, like most of these stories, it comes to a pretty sad end. So in 1865, Hall and the others realized that to survive, they would have to leave New South Wales. So they started leaving this area, but they were going to a place called Goobang Creek. And what they had discovered was that it was a trap, because when they got there were police waiting, hidden in the bush. So on May 5th, 1865, he was shot and killed. And his apparently last words were, "I am wounded, shoot me dead." But the interesting thing comes, apparently the police claimed that they were acting under the protection of the Felons Apprehension Act of 1865, which allowed any bushranger who had been specifically named under the terms of the act to be shot and killed without warning. However, when they had killed Hall, the act had not come into force. So there was a lot of controversy over the legality of him being killed. But his legacy lives on. So he has a memorial near Goobang Creek where he had been shot and killed. There is a well-known poem called The Death of Ben Hall. A number of folk songs have been written about him, and he has a number of television specials as well. So Ben Hall, once again, another example of a guy kind of down on his luck, so he joined up with robbers and started robbing from the rich to feed himself in this case. So, any questions?
Man, the bush wrangler got bushed.
Yeah, he did. He got bushed.
That's
actually
rough.
Do you want to hear the best little part? I almost forgot this.
Yes.
He fell and he held himself up by a sapling, crying that he was dead, he was wounded. So he literally died in a bush.
Oh man,
How
rough.
How karmic his demise.
Oh man, that's pretty rude.
I know, right? So yeah,
I mean, how long was he in Australia his entire life? Is that or did I miss?
He was born in New South Wales, Australia. In a place called Maitland. So both his parents were criminals or were rather convicts who were some of the earliest settlers to Australia. And so Benjamin received his ticket of leave in 1832. That was his father. And then in 1834, his mother was granted her freedom. And so Ben Jr., which is Ben Hall, the one we're talking about, was the fourth child and the third son of the family.
Got it. I understand now.
Yeah, I mean, so like that was one of the things too, especially in like the early days of Australia. Like basically, you got down there and you basically just lived your life there. Now it's easier to access, but especially in like the 1830s, it's pretty difficult to make that trip. So,
man, this sounds like the most cutthroat version of Harvest Moon I've ever heard of.
Yep. Oh man, Australian Harvest Moon would be a great game.
Oh my god, that'd be terrifying. I love it.
I mean, here's the thing: you don't even have to come up with like things to kill you in an Australian version. Like the whole continent just wants you dead.
Yeah, you just have to open up a book.
But yeah,
I don't have any questions, man. That guy got fucked.
Yeah, but I mean, hey man, he was pretty successful at what he did. So props to him.
Yeah,
on
but
that.
you said you said he was spending his money as fast as he was getting it. Like, he's not like Blackbeard in One Piece and had like a whole thing of treasure or anything. Like, he got.
There was one more thing I totally forgot to mention.
Yes,
this is one of my favorite little bits. I can't believe I forgot to mention it. I must have skimmed over this note. So there was an incident in a place called Canawindra in New South Wales, where Hall and his gang bailed up Robinson's hotel. And so all the travelers and all the townspeople were required to remain at the hotel, and they were not mistreated and were, in fact, actually provided with food and entertainment. And so they locked the local policeman in his cell. And when they finally set the hostages free, the gang insisted on paying the hoteler and giving the townspeople expenses. And their aim was to emphasize that the gang could act with impunity and to belittle the police. So they were also kind of like establishing themselves as kind of being Robin Hood-y in that it was like, hey man, we're not necessarily robbing from you, the innocent townsfolk. We're just like, robbing from like the big businesses, like the gold miners and things like that. Which I think is, also very similar to a Robin Hood kind of deal. So yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I like it.
I don't know, me too. All right, but yeah, so that's the history section. That's as they say, that's how it happened in the past times. Joe Scott's 2018.
All right. 2018. That's how it happened in the past time.
That's how it happened in the past time.
Yes.
Oh hey, would you look who it is? Waka waka
Who
waka
is it?
waka 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 waka.
My favorite. Hey Pac-Man, how you doing? Oh boy. You don't sound so good. Are you all right?
Oh, he's writing something down on a piece of paper.
Yeah, I forgot that he doesn't actually speak.
He says
the languages.
He said, holding this pen is very uncomfortable for me because.
Oh yeah, because he's got to hold it with his mouth.
Yeah. But he says, "Hi Cody, I'm doing quite well, thanks. My game was invented before they had voice acting in video games. Therefore, it's not a voice that Joe can screw up on the podcast."
Oh, I beg to differ.
I don't know. Did you hear those waka wakas? Those are pretty good.
Those are pretty good. I'll give you that.
Uh-oh.
Did he die right there?
He got hit by a ghost.
You have ghosts in there?
Yeah,
it's scary shit.
Yeah, it's my good pal Blinky. Hi, Blinky.
Oh, okay. Well, as long as you're... okay. Now, hold on.
Yeah. What up?
Was Pac-Man like a call-in, and then you also called up your good friend to be like, hey, I know you kind of been like trying to get this big yellow ball with like a mouth and eyeballs.
Yeah.
He's going to be here. Did you set up a hit for Pac-Man just now?
No. I just was like, wanted to hang out with my good friend Blinky. But then I got the letter from corporate that said they wanted a bigger star. And Blinky was kind of sad about that. So
so this is a revenge story, is what you're telling me.
I suppose so.
Okay.
Blinky's not picking up the pen. And he's saying...
He can't.
No, he did. He picked it up.
He's a ghost.
Okay.
He's a ghost. He can't pick it up.
Well, he's whispering only in my ear right now, away from the microphone. And he says, "Hey, Cody, I'd like to hear about your recent video game playing. Wait, what's that? Waka 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 waka. Oh my God, he ate
not the right sound.
He ate one of the glowy bits, and now he's big, and he ate Blinky. No, my best friend. No.
Wow, he was your best friend?
No,
man,
Blinky.
This sounds like what they probably first pitched for that Adam Sandler movie, where he's like in like the video games come to real life.
Oh, Pixels, everyone's favorite movie. Yeah. It was actually a very sweet romantic comedy between Adam Sandler and Blinky. And then he found out that Blinky was a dude, so.
And then he was even more for it.
I bet not. So anyway, hey, why don't you tell me about video games, Cody?
All right, so I've been playing the open world video games. If you're following along in this season, that's my theme, is open world games.
Whoa.
Games that are big, expansive, lots of choices, all sorts of good stuff. And I had kind of been beating around the bush on this one, so to speak.
Uh-huh.
I finally got to play a pretty good sizable portion
Okay.
of Assassin's Creed Origins.
Whoa. Cody.
Yeah, it actually came out a little under a year ago.
Wow, okay.
October 27th of 2017.
I don't know if I even heard of this one.
So if anyone's familiar with the Assassin's Creed games,
I am is the weird thing, but
well, if you are familiar, it got to a point with the Assassin's Creed games where they were just pumping them out pretty much yearly.
Sure.
And after 3 is kind of where I lost interest, because the games kind of, besides Black Flags, kind of ended up feeling like the same game, but in a different locale with the same mechanics.
Well, it's crazy.
And not a lot was going on.
It's crazy, too, because correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't 3, like, technically 5?
Yes. Maybe.
Because
there's one,
and then there's two.
Then there's
like 2.
Yeah, there's a whole trilogy in the second game.
Is it just that those other 2 were not like big enough to justify getting their own numbers, or?
Well, the thing is, I think originally they wanted to do 1, 2, and 3, and I don't remember the story very well, so this might be a little bit of nonsense here. But the main writer for like the main story. So any of you who don't know, Assassin's Creed is a stealth game, an action-adventure stealth game where you primarily play in the past, in kind of a fictional history, whether it's France or Renaissance Italy, or the medieval times during the Crusades.
Yeah.
Or, what have you. While that's happening, there's kind of this like sci-fi kick of people are using this machine or this like technology that they call the Animus, and it allows you to watch history through the eyes of one of your descendants.
Sure. And you're also like kind of like living their life, maybe.
Kind of. I mean,
clear.
Yeah, I think for the sake of the game, or for the sake of the story, you are living their life. However, there are certain like fail conditions where it's like you have deviated too far from the path, and then you get like, game overed or whatever.
Yeah, I believe it was like if you killed someone you were not supposed to kill, that was a game over. Or like if you left the city before killing someone, they're like, you have to kill the guy, and it's like,
yeah,
he kept going, and like he took over Europe, and now you look like a total dingus.
Right. So yeah, I mean, it's a video game. They tried to like fit it into the story because it's kind of like a simulation, and the only way to continue through the simulation is to do it how your ancestor did it. Mm-hmm. All that
kind of like Ever After
aside.
High. Now that I'm thinking about it.
What?
Yeah.
No,
because in the television program Ever After High, when you go to high school, you have to sign a book that says that you have to live your life exactly the way that your ancestors lived their life, or else the entire world is destroyed or something, ? I'll have to
Wait, what?
Yeah, it was really...
No, that can't be a real thing that you're telling me.
No, it was really messed up. Joel and I watched all of it. It was like a nightmare. It was like a torture. We don't know why we did it to ourselves.
Oh my god, why would you do that to yourself?
Because you're a royal rebel. That was the other thing. That was the dichotomy. It was royal and rebel. So,
oh boy, no, that sounds terrible.
It was. We watched all of it.
Anyway,
then we started watching Monster High because we were duped by the good puns in the title, but it was even worse somehow.
Tangent aside,
yeah, sorry, that was
Assassin's Creed Origins. By the time people listen to this, won't be the newest game out for the Assassin's Creed games.
Oh, really? What's coming up?
I will talk about it on the next episode.
Hook.
Yeah, Oops. Plot hook.
There you go. Those are good.
Anyways, so I'm going to talk about Assassin's Creed Origins.
Nice.
this game, and the reason it applies is the Assassin's Creed games have always been kind of notorious for having an open world.
Sure.
So I figured it's kind of like when I think of open world games, like this one definitely is on there somewhere in some weird way.
I mean, it was really revolutionary when like the first one came out, if memory serves.
Right.
You're like, what?
Yeah, like it was huge, and
you could climb
it didn't age very well, so I don't recommend playing it now if you're like, oh, what's Assassin's Creed? Do not play that game. The first game is awful.
2's pretty awesome.
Start with
though.
like, yeah, 2, they start to... So there's a formula to these games.
And
I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty, but every game kind of follows a pretty standard Ubisoft Assassin's Creed formula.
Sure.
And if you are a veteran to the series, I mean, I have a feeling that you're going to have those kind of nostalgia glasses on anyways.
Sure.
And no matter what people say, you're still going to play it. So it's kind of whatever. But there's this formula of you're some kind of person, you got to go and sneak your way and go through hoops, and in some cases literally go through hoops to find your target, and then in a big map find a way to assassinate your target and then get away. Like, that's kind of the formula. Stealth mechanics to reward you to getting to the person and then killing them.
And like there was like literally a guy whose like role it was in the game would be like, you didn't complete enough like mini tasks for you to assassinate this guy, and everyone was like, God damn it, that guy.
No, I mean, I wasn't kidding when I said sometimes you have to jump through hoops. I believe in Assassin's Creed 1, one of the things you had to do was jump through hoops.
Possible. It's been a while.
Right. So, anyways, this is this is the semi-newest of the Assassin's Creed bunch.
Uh-huh.
And I'm going to talk about the things that I liked, the things I didn't like, and just kind of overall how I felt about my time playing it.
Sounds good. Let's get into it.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about the good, because I want to start off with some good vibes. One of the things that they introduced, I believe they introduced it in this game, although I could be wrong, because I haven't played, the other games before this, but it introduced a kind of new for this series RPG mechanics, where they've added skill trees where you have to level up to gain certain abilities, and you kind of have to progress.
Oh, that's kind of neat.
Yeah, and they also added like a myriad of different weapon types, so combat is definitely more flushed out in this game than it has been.
I'm also into that.
Like there's different kinds of weapons, and depending on what weapons you're carrying, they have very different mechanics. You have bow and arrows, and there's even different bows, and they have different like abilities. So like one of the arrows you can get is called like the Predator bow.
Whoa.
And basically it allows you to, when you're shooting the arrow, like you have a limited amount of arrows compared to the other bows, but you can control the arrow mid-flight through some fucking bullshit video gamey thing.
You have aftertouch. Go on.
Yeah. And it's so much fun, and it's weird that, because like one of my big gripes with old Assassin's Creed games, a lot of the world was just kind of these unnecessarily long collectathons where you collect like a thing and it doesn't do anything for you until you get them all, and then sometimes it's just like, hooray, you unlocked the fucking soundtrack to the game, and it's like, oh cool, like I didn't get anything for doing this.
Yes,
but when they added these RPG mechanics, like going and doing side quests gives you experience to level you up, or certain areas might have better loot than other areas, and it kind of gave it a new breath of life to explore the world. And this world is huge. Like, this is a open world if I've ever seen one. I mean, this game takes place in Egypt, around the time of 49 to 47 BC is what I read, although I don't actually know.
I've not played it, so...
I mean, I saw that in game. I don't know if that's accurate or not, or if it's like a historical like like it's close enough.
Yeah, sure.
And you get to see like Cleopatra and Julius Caesar, I believe. Yeah, that makes sense. And lots of like iconic people from history.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this like whole like there's this cult that's trying to basically take, basically put everybody in this kind of like, fascist like dictatorship almost.
Okay.
And they're collecting these like relics of the gods or whatever, and kind of crazy convoluted story. But anyways, it gives you reason to explore this like giant world. And because they added all these new weapons and things, and they added more stuff, fighting feels more varied. So getting in combat with people isn't like a frickin' chore like the first couple games were, where all you could really do is like parry and block.
Yeah.
And that was it. Like there's like light and heavy attacks. You have a shield now, and so you can like block attacks. You can dodge attacks, and there's like a kind of like a cool power up mode where like you fill up a bar and then your attacks do more damage as you're like in this kind of rage mode.
So like they paid attention to other video games.
Yeah, they basically took the things that made other games work, put them into their game, and it feels good. Like fighting felt fun in this game for the first time in a really long time. Granted, I never got through the whole game. I know there's like, this game's huge. Like even with the amount of time that I had, eventually other games like Tomb Raider and Spider-Man got caught up with me. Mm-hmm. But leveling early on is pretty easy enough where you don't have to like go out of your way to grind out levels in order to like meet the requirements. So like that was really nice. Like I felt like the side quests were actually like optional, but they're fun and they give you stuff, so you should probably do them.
Okay.
Instead of being like, if you don't complete all of our mundane side quests, you'll never make it through the game.
I wonder what game you're talking about.
And also, like I said before briefly, the world is gigantic. Like if you go online and look up the map of Assassin's Creed and like the scale of this game, it's huge. And there's just a lot of cool stuff, like, like different items and lore, like, things about Egypt. It's just really, like, this game, like, they really, from what I understand, they took a break after Unity before they made Origins.
Okay.
And Unity was at least to me, was just a disaster. That game sucked. It was not fun. I didn't want it, like, the game was just bleh. But then I think they took a year off or something like that. They took an extended break and then made this game.
See?
And I think that did them a world of good.
Anytime you take a break, it always pays off dividends, so.
And then I'm going to talk about the things I didn't like.
Okay.
It's a shorter list,
Hooray.
Don't worry.
That's encouraging.
Yeah. It isn't optimized well for computer. I found that this was a very common problem for a lot of people. There's something weird about if you've got multi-core processors or some shit, like there's something weird going on there. And apparently there's like a fix, but it's such a common complaint that like it's obvious that they didn't do it right.
Interesting.
And because of this, because it wasn't optimized, there was a lot of stuttering. Loading screens were very weird and like janky. There's some funny images if you look up like Assassin's Creed like low performance like on Google.
Okay.
Like you can see like people without like faces, and it's just like their eyeballs and lips, and it's fucking bizarre.
I don't like that. That's spooky.
Leveling in the game, while it's like a neat mechanic and it kind of forces you to like, or not forces you, but it gives you incentive to explore, it also restricts your gameplay flow because every area is leveled to a certain degree. So like you have your starting area. So if you're familiar with RPGs, like your starting area is like levels 1 to 5. Cool. Once you hit 5, you can go to the next area, and that place is like 5 to 10. Well, they did something kind of similar. So, like, for a game that's about exploring, it sucks that at a certain point, you have to be like, well, I guess I gotta go back and do the main quest because those hyenas that I was slaying earlier, the ones just like 50 feet to that way, will kick my ass if I don't go and grind some levels. Like, it feels very gamey, linear, especially for a game that has always kind of been about, here's this big giant open world to explore, but you can't go there, because fuck you, that's why.
That's, no, boo.
Yeah. And then this last bit is just, if you fight enemies that are like too high level, like it's basically a guaranteed loss. At least from the difficulty that I played it on, trying to fight enemies that were higher level than you, it was just game over. Like, you should just run and try to hide because you're gonna die.
That's not fun.
Right. And that kind of just cements my previous point that the leveling kind of forces you to like move in the way Ubisoft or Assassin's Creed wants you to go. And my final statement on the game. So I got my pros, got my cons, we got into some side tangents about
Ever After High.
Assassin's Creed. I feel like it's the same Assassin's Creed formula. Like, it's
Sure.
You go to a place, do some quests, get your target, go into a really cool area with lots of options, kill the target, etc. I feel like even though the formula hasn't really changed a whole lot, and like for the most part the game has kind of been pretty stagnant in terms of like being super different from game to game.
Uh-huh.
This is, in my personal opinion, this is probably the best version of the Assassin's Creed formula.
Okay.
And through all my time playing, I did a lot of side quests and, ran around, had fun. Like, this is a solid game compared to the games that I had played in the past.
Sounds good.
I recommend it if you want a big, lengthy open world game where you get to sneak around and assassinate people and fight people in Egypt. Like if any of that sounds good to you, this game's definitely worth a pickup.
All right.
Do you have any questions?
No, I'm just glad to hear that it's getting a little bit better, because I heard that, they got pretty bad there for a while.
Yeah.
I remember, for a lot of reasons, one of which just being that I don't own my own system, I remember people being like, we want American Revolution Assassin's Creed, and, it hit me, I was like, but why? America didn't have, anything cool to claim on yet.
Well, and you know what's the worst part? That's Assassin's Creed 3, and I think, in terms of, the in-game historical stuff, Assassin's Creed 3 was pretty weak. And the only reason I like that game so much is because the outside story, the modern day story, it almost got to this moment where we were gonna play Assassin's Creed in modern day with a modern day assassin, and then they give you kind of half a level or a little scenario, and then they take that away from you and just say, go back to, America.
The American Revolution. Well, and then, it also just seemed to me, in my cynical brain, that, it was just an extended preview to see if people liked the sailing mechanic, so they could release Black Flag. Because, Black Flag came out, 2 months later or something like that. I was like, okay, people liked the sailing mechanic, we could build a whole game around it, and then they just dropped Black Flag,
I mean, to be fair, Black Flags, in my personal opinion, is a fantastic game. If you want to play a pirate game that's got a little bit of sneaking and assassinating in it,
I want to play it real bad, but
Black Flags is pretty good. I had great fun sailing around, listen to the sea shanties.
Sailing for
It was
Adventure
good.
on the Big Blue Wet thing.
Yeah.
There's 3 people who liked that reference, so for all 3 of you, you're welcome. It's from Muppet Treasure Island, my favorite pirate movie.
I like it.
So anyway, middle section. Wait. Oh, wait. Okay.
I'm waiting.
It's time for the middle section, lad. Heave ho, heave ho. The middle section's where we tell you to go, to learn about our social media. You sneak so fair. And look at the beautiful lassie with the ribbons in her hair. There you go, middle section.
Damn, that was great.
That was right off the dome.
That was so good.
I like writing shanties. They're fun and easy.
Hey guys, this is the middle section where we tell you about how to get in contact with us, how to, hang out with us on social media and stuff like that. Yeah. So for those of you who like Twitter and want to tweet at us, you can get at us at fandomr_podcast.
Yeah.
That is our Twitter handle.
Look at that.
If you'd like to send us a personal question about, some of the things we've talked about, or send us your absolutely, disgusting fanfic of some of our garbage kids.
I will read it.
Joe will read it. You can find us, or you can email us at fanroulettepodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Or if you go to our website, www.fandomroulette.com, you can find us there with our personal bios and all of our episodes. And at the very bottom, a little form that you can fill out to send us questions that go straight to our email. Yeah. We are also on iTunes and SoundCloud and wherever you normally get your podcast from. So please do share us around with your friends. Tell people about us. If you've got a friend who's world building, please let them, tell them about us.
Yeah. Maybe we can.
We're doing a whole season section about world building,
and then they can.
Or if they're just rogue, they love rogues. The first part of the history section. Mwah.
Yeah. Or
we're also on the other social medias on Facebook and Instagram and Tumblr at Fandom Roulette.
Yes.
And that's all I got.
And as always, please oh wait, did you say we're on SoundCloud and iTunes?
Yeah.
Right. Please rate, review, and subscribe on those things. That helps us move up the ranks. It makes more people notice us. And please tell a friend, because we do this for fun. This is a labor of love, and the more people listen to it, the happier we become, even though it opens us up for more. But anyways,
yes, you're right.
So yeah, middle section time is over, and it's into the Garbage Kid, where we talk about a person from Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Everything. So,
Yar.
Oh god, it smells so bad in here.
Oh god, now you brought it over here.
I don't know how, because we're in different rooms, but
through the power of the internet.
That's how the internet works. Yep. So this is my good new friend Tome Nemesis Victor.
Hold up.
Yeah.
Tome Nemesis Victor.
I was reading it on the website. I was like, how am I supposed to pronounce it? And I was like, oh, it's Nemesis and also Victor, and they just smushed them together. Oh,
yeah.
So this is Garbage Kid, which is where Cody and I roll a completely random character off of all of the charts from a little D&D supplement book called Xanathar's Guide to Everything.
Everything?
Yep, everything.
Yes.
And sometimes it creates fun little contradictions in, a chaotic evil paladin who became a paladin to protect the world from evil. Whoops.
Huh.
But anyway, so this is Tome Nemesis Victor, who is a half-elf monk who started their life as a charlatan. Oh, they are also
cool.
True neutral. I did not write that down. But they knew who their parents were or are. One parent was an elf, and the other parent was a human. And they were born in a prison or in the headquarters of a secret organization. I don't know why those are combined, but they are.
Some Illuminati shit.
They had 5 siblings, and they are the youngest. And they were raised by both their mother and their father.
Aw, little baboos.
Yeah. They had a wealthy lifestyle, and they had an apartment in a rundown neighborhood.
Wait.
Yeah, I know, right? It's fun little things like that. because you can roll really garbage on the residence table.
I mean, maybe it's run down for the area, but it's really like a super rich place.
Yeah, or like they were wealthy, but like they kind of hid it, and so like they were doing like a Wayne thing. Although the Waynes did live in their big mansion, didn't they? Wait, now I'm trying to remember.
I don't know who you're talking about.
Like Bruce Wayne?
Oh, no, I mean, at least the ones that I've seen, they have like that huge mansion.
Yeah, but like
Alfred.
But like his dad like turned his back on or his dad became like a doctor because like he was like money or whatever. They had several friends and their childhood was generally a happy one, and they became a charlatan because they often got in trouble but managed to talk their way out of it every time.
Cool.
They became a monk because they were overwhelmed with grief after losing someone close to them, so they sought the advice of philosophers to help cope with their loss. Their monastery was founded by gnomes and is an underground labyrinth of tunnels and rooms. Their monastic symbol is a kirin. The monastery sees its main purpose as watching over and protecting the land in the manner of the kirin. And their master was merciless in pushing them to their limits. They nearly lost an eye during one especially brutal practice session. And Tome Nemesis Victor is 31 to 40 years old and had 4 life events. They made a friend of an adventurer. They had a supernatural experience where they woke up one morning miles from their home with no idea how they got there. They suffered a tragedy. A family member or a close friend died, and they were murdered.
Whoa!
And then they gained a bit of good fortune. They found an additional trinket that I did not roll for, but I probably should have.
How dare you?
I know, I'm sorry. I'm the worst. Cancel the podcast. I'm done. Signing off. This is Joe.
Oh, God, no, Cody.
Anyway, all right. So, do you think they would go into Hot Topic? Do you think they would buy anything from Hot Topic? And go.
Okay, I think they would definitely at least go in once.
Okay.
But I don't think they're edgy enough to buy something.
All right.
Yeah. I don't know. Some things were like they lived a good, honest life, but then other things like losing an eye, I don't know. I don't think they have the gumption to buy that studded leather belt.
That's true.
Or that wristband to their favorite 90s to 2000s rock band.
Oh, God. Oh, Hot Topic. You're such a gift. This episode is sponsored by Hot Topic. Hot Topic. Yeah, we still exist. You can get your Harry Potter merch here. You get your Harry Potter and Tim Burton merch here now. Hey, look, it's a Pickle Rick. You like that, right? Hot Topic. Someone's gonna listen to this and just gonna send it to Hot Topic, and we're just gonna get the angriest letter.
Oh man! Oops.
Nah, it's fine. It's cool. Hot Topic doesn't listen to us.
Yeah.
They probably wouldn't even care. They'd be like, "Hey, they make fun of us." They're like, "Yeah, we know."
Yeah, we're totally cool.
So anyway, I'm gonna say that no, they never even went into a Hot Topic because they're monks, so they turned their back on worldly possessions.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
No. I don't know. There was something about it as I was going along. Like they had experienced a lot, but like I don't know. They probably go to like box lunch.
Oh,
box lunch is like Hot Topic but brighter lit. It's technically owned by the same company, actually.
Oh God!
Yeah.
No wonder.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, so as Cody mentioned during the middle section, this our RPG section, this kind of go around has been about like world building and things to consider as you're world building, and so like it kind of was straddling this little thing where Cody and I were both building our own worlds, and we're also kind of talking about broader ideas. So if you listened to our episode last week, we talked about governments, but we didn't necessarily like build governments for our respective little areas. Although we mentioned it a little bit, but like that's not here or there. And so this week we're going to be talking about another concept that I would argue is similar to governments in that it's like I want to talk about it in like a more broad perspective, which is culture. So would you like to jump in real quick and do your little thing?
Yeah.
Cool.
So, culture is a lot of things to a lot of people.
Yep.
When I was doing research to sound smarter about the topic, I think I came out of it with more questions than answers.
Yep. It's like a whole thing in history.
Right. It's kind of and it's hard because it is basically all of the kind of elements and things of the way people live
Mm-hmm.
all combined into one word. So it's got a lot of things attached to it, like, your beliefs and your values and, the knowledge of things you've learned in art and your social constructs and your governments and all this kind of stuff. So when I say this with experience. Designing your own cultures is very complicated and tough, and it's going to be a long road, but you know what? It's going to be a fun one, and there's a lot that can help you build the kind of people that are going to be in your game. And then my little side warning, because I thought this was necessary, due to the fact that this is super difficult and a very, to fully flesh out a culture, you have you open yourself to potentially offending people at your table.
Yeah.
With potential stereotypes and kind of taking cultures and breaking them down into these kind of smaller topics. Like that can be offensive to people. But what I say to that is, don't worry. This is a group storytelling experience. If someone is offended, that's okay, because they're allowed to be. And here's how you move forward. You discuss with them, much like in a session 0, you discuss with them, why is that offensive? Or, what should, and work with them to find a better solution to the thing that makes your culture offensive.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to change things, because I think in the end, you're going to learn a lot more about the people you're playing with. You're going to learn about cultures in general, and those players become more invested when you're willing to work with them. Because this is, like I said, for a lot of people, for me very personally, it's a group storytelling experience.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my little aside and my kind of warning to people.
Yeah. Well, no, I think it's a really important thing to start off with. And not to soapbox or anything like that, I do think that is also a good piece of advice for life, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always be willing to, if someone says, hey, that, I was kind of insulted or offended by that, open up a dialogue, see why, and talk about it. But anyways.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things to start off with, kind of to jump off of your point a little bit too, there's a whole subsection of history called cultural history, which is still very incredibly controversial in the history field, because people, the one big argument is you can't assume to build how people saw their world. Especially too, because hey, monoliths are not a thing when it comes to humanity. So you can't say things like all people believed X and Y and Z, because no, that's just not how the world works.
Right.
So I'm gonna start off by kind of taking a point that we had talked a little bit about last week, which is pay attention to world history while developing cultures. So in the very basest of senses, if you look at different areas and different periods of history, culture shifts based on a lot of factors. So for instance, looking at the medieval context, medieval European art can sometimes be viewed as simplistic. Would you disagree with that?
No.
No,
I wouldn't disagree with that.
It's because, a lot of people were fighting for, things like getting meals or protections or fighting wars or things like that. And then, you jump ahead to the Renaissance, and then all of a sudden you start seeing this beautiful art, or like people writing treatises and people writing, like books and novel, or like stories and plays and all these different things, is because, there was more people who were like living in urban areas and things like that. There was less emphasis or less worry about where your next meal was coming from, and therefore there was more time to devote to things like the arts and art and culture and things like that. So that's a big one right there. So if you want to have a very robust, like, oh, there's like libraries just full of tomes that like my players can find, and I've written like 150 really silly titles that I think that they would all get a kick out of. They're like, hey, maybe consider making it more of like a Renaissance-y feel than like a medieval Europe feel.
Yeah. Yep.
Two, like, different things that your country might do can also impact what their culture might appear to be, or how they would appear to be. So for instance, perhaps a region of your kingdom is isolationist, and so therefore they didn't have like a similar culture exchange, and so there could be aspects of that culture that to your people feel very foreign because they're doing it their own way, and they never necessarily adapted to other cultures as they learn and work with one another. That's another consideration to make as well.
Yeah,
and I do think that I'm just going to throw this one out there. One of my favorite examples, and one of the things that I've been turning to quite a lot as I've been doing my world building, is Star Trek. Allow me to explain.
I would have never guessed. Please do.
So, as I was world building, like, one of the things I really wanted to avoid was the concept of, there are, good races and evil races, because, like, I've never really been a fan of that. So, like...
You mean you're not a fan of racism?
No, I'm not a fan of racism. I'm going to take a bold stand right here, right now. Joe Scott's does not like racism.
I don't either.
Yeah, I know.
I'll stand with you on that one.
Right? And, like, I think, too, like, you've done a lot of cool stuff in Basal, about, like, like, orcs are not just, like, chaotic evil like they are in the book. Like, the book's like, yep, they're chaotic evil. And it's like, well, no, that's wrong, So when you watch Star Trek, most all of the alien races you encounter on that show have well-developed cultures, and a lot of the conflict and disagreement of the shows come from culture clash more than anything else, right? You have, like, the Klingons, who are, like, the proud warrior race guys, and they view their worth in terms of, like, battle and honor and these various things, which in the original series, creates conflict with the Federation, which is all about, like, diplomatic peace making and things like that. And, it's not just establishing that one side is actively good or one side is actively evil. It was just two cultures that were in many ways similar to one another, having disagreements of how the best way to move forward is. Going along with that too, the show also, I think, does a really good job of establishing characters that are even outliers in their own civilization. So, like I said, avoiding this whole monolith theory. So, like, for instance, in Deep Space Nine, the show I'm watching right now, the Cardassians are a kind of authoritarian style government, but there are people who are teachers of, democratic thought, and, we're trying to change the way that Cardassia operates and runs and operates and things like that. So don't be afraid to have disagreements within your own populace, because not everyone who lives in your country is going to necessarily agree with everything, every way that the things are done. And I always argue it's more interesting if the conflict is because people see their cultures differently, not necessarily because, they are evil and therefore their culture is evil.
I can agree with that. That's good.
So anyway,
some good advice.
Yeah, jump on in.
Yeah. So obviously there's I would argue there are probably three ways to kind of build your culture.
Yeah, go for it.
There's straight up just taking one and relabeling it.
Sure.
Which has its uses. I think if you want to, like, you know, if you want to partake in kind of a historical event, it's very easy in a fantasy setting to just relabel the Romans and name them the elves, or not even a race, just like they're a new culture of people.
The kingdom of ...
Exactly. Or, and the other thing that is largely used is borrowing culture concepts from cultures from around the world.
Sure.
And putting them into, you know, and mishmashing them and seeing what sticks, kind of a thing. And then the most daunting, but I think pretty rewarding when you do finally do it, is building one straight, you know, from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And things to... These are like the main questions, and like, again, this is one of those things where I ask the question, and then once you answer it, then you're going to have to make sure that all of this kind of, at least in your mind, the viewer, the audience, how this, like, because this is all like a series of cogs that makes a machine.
Sure.
Right? Like they should,
100%.
like, these culture questions should be cogs that sit nicely with each other so that you make, you know, this living, breathing thing.
Yeah.
So things to consider. Where does this culture live? You know, is it, you know, the type of climate can spawn some further questions, like what kind of resources are they near?
Sure.
Those kinds of things, because that turns into, if they have, you know, an abundance of resources nearby, what does, and you said this before, what kind of technology are we talking about? How far along are they? Are they, you know, are they in a technological renaissance? Are they, you know, are we taking it back? Are we pushing it forward? And then also, and I feel like this is kind of combined in this, how does magic work in that scenario?
Yes.
Like, how did magic evolve technology? If there are muskets and gunpowder, how does magic work in that? You know, these are the kinds of questions you want to ask yourself. And then further, beliefs or religions. You know?
Yes.
What is the... Huh?
I didn't even think about that aspect of culture, but it's a big one.
Yeah. What kind of religions are we talking about? Is there one focal one with a lot of scattered smaller ones, you know, fighting for, you know, the spotlight, so to speak?
Is it a truly polytheistic society where you can worship wherever you'd like and no one really cares?
Yeah, these are questions you're going to want to ask yourself. And then we talked mostly about it last week. How does that affect your government structure? Yeah. So I won't stay on that topic for too long. And then economy. How does your culture prosper? Yeah. Do they have friends? Do they have enemies? Is there a lot of trading? Has the culture blended a little bit with other people around because of friends and enemies? Or have they made so many enemies that they've kind of, like you said earlier, isolated themselves so that there's kind of this almost culture shock when you go from one place to another? And then and I said this before, I'll say it again. How do all of these fit together? How does it make sense in your head?
Yes.
That's super important. And then, of course, the one that I beat you over the head with day after day. How does it fit in your theme? Your theme. How does it fit there? Because you created this theme. I think your culture should at least in some way be enhancing that in some fashion.
Yes, I'd agree with that as well.
Yeah, so those are, and granted, those aren't the only questions. I could think of a million questions to ask about those, but those are good
weeks on this.
Those are good starting points. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a little snippet of some of the culture you're working on? Or like summarize. You don't have to even say a whole lot. Just like a short 2 sentence like thing about it.
Yeah, I would say that my main kingdom that I've been working on, the closer you get to the capital, the more sort of like artsy and artistic it becomes. Like I have
Okay.
like a whole merchant district in the capital, and the merchants there are considered some of the best in like the world, especially the artificers. The fact that magic has like become limited, not outlawed, but kind of limited, has really allowed people to do more artificing work, which has created some kind of wonders. As you move out, there are some more rural areas that have their own forms of culture, so they are performing like these more traditional plays, kind of like morality plays. Whereas as you get closer to the city, you start seeing different, theater troupes presenting original works of rival theater troupes and things like that. And then there has been a fair bit of blending just based on the fact that they are so open to like refugees coming across their borders, which
Okay.
I established. It's like it's a very racially diverse area, and not everyone is necessarily born there. Like if a person is coming and escaping for whatever reason, they are brought into this society, and so there has been a lot of kind of blending. So and then one last thing is I think that's best seen in the gods, which I will get to in our religion episode. So
Yeah.
which I think is next week.
Very cool. Yep.
Yeah,
I think so.
I'm excited about that one. I built a pantheon like a month ago, and I'm really
Nice.
excited to
I like
talk
it.
about
I like
them.
it.
So, but yeah,
Very
overview
cool.
for you.
So I'm not gonna get too far into it, but basically, like I said in the last session or the last episode, maybe a couple episodes ago, this is my world came from this kind of golden age of this empire, this kingdom of Lundar, and they kind of fell out because of a great calamity, and most of the cultures some take bits and pieces of old kind of Lundar like honor and that kind of battle hardened empire,
Mm-hmm.
and bring it to their own. But there's also this mix of the culture can exist and the towns can exist because of these demigods that have sprouted up.
Okay.
So a lot of people tend to stay, like there's not a whole lot of traveling unless it's traveling within your kind of localized territory, if that makes sense.
Okay. Given what I know about the world, that does make a lot of sense.
And technology is pretty far back from the cataclysm.
Okay.
They're kind of, some would argue that they were probably in a industrial renaissance, but then fell back to medieval as a lot of people ended up dying. So there are like places that you can find technology, but most of technology is gone. However, magic has kind of taken an uprising as these demigods have gifted people their magic. So magic is kind of becoming a thing where technology is kind of fallen away.
Oh, interesting.
So there's kind of this interesting, like, there's evolution through magic and less so on technology, which is kind of typical in fantasy, I feel like.
I would agree with that.
It's either one or the other, but I'm kind of taking a similar approach, but I mean, I have a whole thing, but I'm going to save it for the God section. But yeah, the culture kind of derives from Lundar, and the majority, because not everyone is this, but they value like honor, loyalty, and then like commitment, stuff like that. But yeah, that's this one of the city states that I've been talking about, which is located by the southern swamps, is the city state Balara, and the towns neighboring it, and they got an interesting thing going on. I think a lot of them do, just because they've survived such a great tragedy and now they're trying to like rebuild. So
Sure, I understand that.
there's some other things in play there.
All right.
But yeah, that's the area of Balara. Not a whole lot, but
Oh, I know.
I give a lot away if I talk about the religion.
Oh,
So
I'm excited.
Yeah, me
shall
too.
we wrap her up?
yeah,
We want to thank you guys so much for listening to yet another episode of Phantom Roulette. Please go back to that middle section to go back to all of hear about our social media, and as always, shameless plug. Please like, rate, review, subscribe, all of those wonderful things. It helps us move up those ranks, and it helps us to keep doing this thing that we're having such a good time doing. So
yeah. Thanks, guys, so much.
We really appreciate it.
It's been a blast.
But signing off for Phantom Roulette, this is Joe.
And I'm Cody.
As always, stay nerdy.
Stay super nerdy.